September 22nd, 1989, Hurricane Hugo slams into the South Carolina coast. It causes billions of dollars worth of property damage and kills 26 people, but for the difference of 600 miles. It didn't take long for Hurricane Hugo to flex his muscles against the South Carolina coast. All the waiting, watching, and wondering climaxed in a few short hours of battering winds, hard rain, and a flooding storm surge. Hugo struck with a vengeance never before felt in South Carolina.
I'm standing on my house right now.
That's my kitchen, and then I had a porch out here, and it was beautiful. I can't find it.
532 to headquarters.
The saga began far out to sea a week earlier. Hugo crashed through Puerto Rico, killing dozens. It slipped by the Bahamas and then set its sights on South Carolina. Hugo's 130-mile-per-hour winds made land just before 1 o'clock Friday morning at Charleston. It cut a swath through the state in less than 4 hours. The storm moved at 20 miles per hour. Winds at the inner wall of the eye circulated about 115 miles per hour. That caused winds at the right side of center to be the strongest and do the most damage. Right in its path stood the small fishing community of McClellanville. A 100-mile-long storm surge, an 18-foot-high wall of water rushed over everything in its path. McClellanville's town hall didn't make it through the night. South Carolina emergency officials knew Hugo was coming. The state recently completed an evacuation plan. Officials say if it had not been in place, more than 26 people would have died. The last time a hurricane hit South Carolina was 1954. Her name was Hazel. This time, emergency officials set up an operations center in North Charleston and were able to use television, which wasn't available during Hazel, to set the evacuation in motion. Roads were jammed with cars and trucks, but it was an orderly evacuation.
Too late to go way upriver, so we got over behind the steel mill, and we tied up to some great big pilings with some nylon rope, and about 12 o'clock it got really bad, and it pulled the pilings down, and we actually had to fight the storm under full power, you know, just going back and forth all night long, and it was the worst I've ever had, I'll tell you. It was really bad. When the storm surge hit about 1:30, the one marker that we were looking at for reference, that's the only thing we could see, was that one little red marker to keep us from either running into the town or running into the island, because all the lights were out, all the electricity was out. And this little marker kept going further and further underwater. And if that red light had went under, we would have lost the boat.
You had mentioned a minute ago about what you think about. About every 5 minutes, I look at my watch and just thank God for allowing me to live just 5 more minutes.
People in the McClellanville area were evacuated to the Lincoln High School. It almost became their watery grave.
They were screaming, crying, calling for God. Only thing you can hear was, God, help me.
The storm surge filled the cafeteria. People climbed on top of tables and at one point put children in ceiling ventilation ducts to escape the rising water.
It ran through my mind that there's several hundred people down here drowning. The water got up to here to the adults, and they were on tables. It looks like it just got high enough, and then it went down. If it'd gone any, with a foot, that would have made the difference.
It's a mess.
Once Hugo passed through South Carolina, it was time to assess the damage and try to get things back to normal, or as close as possible. While South Carolina had a plan to deal with the storm, there was no real plan to deal with the reconstruction. Red Cross and Salvation Army workers responded to provide emergency aid, but it quickly became apparent more help was needed, especially for the long term.
I know yesterday we've got 1,400.
Within days, help started pouring in from all over the country. Ocean County residents opened their hearts and adopted the town of McClellanville, South Carolina.
McClellanville, as we chose it, is a fishing community on the coast. I mean, it is literally right on the water, in a cove, very similar to that of some of the coastal communities here, Point Pleasant, Seaside. And we felt, in preparing for the storm, we lucked out. Ocean County lucked out. We, as a radio station, assumed that when we heard what was happening down in South Carolina, as the result of local response, we felt that, hey, this could have been Ocean County.
If they can call 349-2010.
The radio stations held a 12-hour radiothon to organize a relief effort.
Ready for the call.
These people down there are devastated. They have no homes, entire towns level. No place to live, no place to work, no place to shop.
The mood was, how are we going to fill up 4 trucks? 4. And that was a major concern. 4 tractor trailers. I just can't, I'm laughing only because of the fact that what it ended up.
It eventually wound up being a 38-truck caravan carrying everything from dry ice, cleaning fluids, and generators to 3 fire trucks, replacing those lost or damaged in the storm.
Our advantage, or the advantage that this whole effort had, was we had people in place, eyes and ears. We had a destination, McClellanville. They knew we were coming, which is probably one of the more important things here.
South Carolina state troopers escorted the mile-long caravan into McClellanville.
We've got several big rigs, more than just several, many big rigs that are coming in, and we'll be working on warehousing some of the materials for future distribution for over the next couple of weeks.
Once everything was logged, Army National Guardsmen helped unload the trucks. The whole idea started with secure moving and storage of Tuckerton.
And I thought about the problems you guys had down here. And then I went in the next morning and I talked to my boss, Ron McQuaid, and I said, how about if we put 1 trailer load together for the people down in South Carolina? And he said, sure, why not? I never thought it'd be 40 vehicles.
They worked along with Stefanik Realtors of Seaside Park to help organize the effort. Along with the caravan, Ocean County residents raised more than $100,000 in cash. That money bought things like building materials, cars, and major appliances. The last installment went to help oyster fishermen rebuild their boats in an effort to stimulate the seafood-based economy. WCBD television in Charleston honored Ocean County for its continued effort. The county stuck with the area after emergency needs were met, so consumer reporter Ted Knight bestowed his Good Apple Award.
Thank you.
Ocean County adopted the McClellanville area because residents knew that except for the difference of a few hundred miles of coastline, Hugo could have ravaged the Jersey shore. March 1962, high winds and rough seas battered New Jersey. Long Beach Island was devastated, $80 million worth of damage, and 9 lives lost. Long Beach Island today shows few, if any, signs of the '62 storm.
We did suffer severe devastation to our barrier islands. However, people that were there then, not too many are left on those barrier islands today. So there isn't a real recent history of a storm like that, but sure, it could happen here. It has the potential for happening here. We know it has happened here in the past.
Hurricane Hugo served as a not-so-gentle reminder of the lesson Ocean County learned in 1962. Would Ocean County today be able to handle a storm the magnitude of Hugo?
I don't think anybody is ever prepared for a storm to cause the devastation that Hugo did. However, physically, we certainly are prepared as any county could be. But psychologically, to see that kind of devastation, I don't think anybody's ever ready to see that. As often as I view films of devastation, I still have a very difficult time imagining it happening here in Ocean County.
If a storm the size of Hugo took a beat on Ocean County, emergency officials would react in much the same way as their South Carolina counterparts.
Anytime we have the threat of a storm such as that, we start to gear up here in Ocean County at the EOC. We might partially activate, we may put people on standby, we may start to look at our resources for cots, blankets, shelters, what's available to help take care of the people. Certainly Salvation Army and Red Cross would be here starting to make plans for sheltering if an evacuation was determined necessary.
She says operations in New Jersey would differ from South Carolina. The state offices of emergency management are organized differently. New Jersey, she says, would have more equipment at its disposal.
We might be able to move a little more quickly. Certainly the recovery would be extensive and it would certainly take time. There's no two ways about that, and I don't think anybody can dispute that. And certainly I would hope that it would run as efficiently as it possibly could under the circumstances.
Chisholm Cohen says there will always be some people who won't understand the power of a storm. Some will refuse to leave, preferring to stand their ground. As for the county and state emergency officials and their preparedness, Chisholm Cohen says there is only so far you can go. You can only be so prepared.
When the time comes, every disaster is going to have its own individual personality, and that's what you're really going to have to deal with at the time.
So it's basically you can only be so prepared?
Yeah. Until we have manufactured disasters where we know exactly what's going to happen, that's just about what you can do. You can only do so much. You can't practice evacuation, you can't practice some of those things, but then there are other things that we exercise constantly here in the county which make me feel pretty confident about handling almost anything that could come our way.
Ocean County residents were there when their southern neighbors were in need, and the reverse would be true if a storm like Hugo hit New Jersey. It's sometimes difficult to understand just how much damage a hurricane can do. Ocean Countyans, with their trips to places like McClellanville, Garden City, Myrtle Beach, and Charleston, found out that it's beyond the imagination of most. And those images are etched in their minds as they've gained a new respect for nature.